A welfare reform advocate by the name of Seton Motley told Fox News host Steve Doocy that instead of raising the minimum wage, the best way to keep people off of welfare was to stop them from having kids. Oh boy. Now, first Motley, who is the president of something called Less Government, said the first thing we need to do is to bring back the idea of shame. Let's watch.
You say that shame is a powerful motivator. What do you mean?
Well, we know it is because the left has warped and redirected it and wants to shame taxpayers for not paying enough taxes and for wanting to know what government money is being used to do. Bob Dole in his terrible 96 presidential campaign said we've lost shame as a motivating factor in our society. We have, in the way he meant it. What we need to do is know government does a terrible job of tracking how they spend our money. If we publish the welfare recipients, we'll track it. We know there's widespread welfare abuse. Government doesn't seem to care to do anything about reining it in. If the American taxpayers who are paying the freight know who's getting welfare, they can keep a better eye on who's abusing the system, etc., and perhaps we can do some real serious welfare reform.
Oh, there's widespread welfare abuse. Okay, that is patently false. There's actually very little abuse in the welfare system. In fact, every congressional probe and reputable study confirms that there's actually very low levels of fraud and abuse. And even Steve Doocy, and part of the clip that I had to cut out, Steve Doocy was like, well, there are some people. Just some people. Yeah, there are some people. There's a couple people. That's why they're very high-profile cases of welfare fraud. If it were commonplace, well, you wouldn't have to shed so much light on it now, would you? It's not really a commonplace thing. And as I said, there's a lot of data to back that up. Now, as to the shame part, well, I actually do want to shame a certain taxpayer. The taxpayer that I want to shame is the rich getting away with paying less taxes than most middle-class families. I think you and I think we would all agree that if you were to do that, if you were to shame the people who are not only super, super wealthy, but are getting handouts from the government, from you and I, well, yeah, you'd want to know about that. Because that's a much, much worse and actually a much bigger part of government expenditure. Corporate welfare actually makes up more money than general welfare. So maybe we should actually go after them instead and shame them. Now, Rebecca Vallis, who is the other guest, and she's at the Center for American Progress, actually countered some of his points and actually talked about how the real shame is that our minimum wage in this country is a poverty wage, and I absolutely agree. Now, according to Vallis, conservatives who support less spending should also back raising the minimum wage to at least $12 an hour, which I think would be a start. Now, she said that doing that would save about $53 billion in food stamps over the next 10 years. Now, look at that. That's a pretty novel way to save money on welfare spending, right? Actually making sure that people who work for a living can actually take care of themselves, that are paid enough to survive. Well, does anybody want to guess how Motley responds? Of course, he's going to respond with the same old bullshit. Watch.
Yeah, once again, let's shame the people who are creating jobs rather than, shaming the people who are receiving welfare. And of course, she's got half the table right on raising the minimum wage. Of course, the number of people on assistance will explode because of all the jobs that will be killed as a result of the raising of the minimum wage.
Oh, here we go again with that. The same old discredited talking point. Oh my God, if you raise wages for working people, it's going to kill jobs. It's going to kill jobs. It's going to take the jobs out back. It's going to shoot them in the face like Old Yeller. You remember Old Yeller? That was a sad movie. It made me cry. Therefore, you cannot raise the minimum wage because of Old Yeller. Dude, that's their logic. That's what they come at you with. The same old bullshit talking points that have been disproven over and over and over again. In fact, you go to places that raise minimum wage, they're actually doing better. And not just the workers, but actually the companies as well. The companies in the area have shown growth. And they're actually hiring more people because there's actually demand. This is Economics 101. But this guy, obviously does not know economics 101. When people have more money to spend, they're going to spend it. And that's going to go back into the economy. It's going to help create jobs. That's how this whole thing works. Now, instead of being in favor of a policy that actually works and can be implemented, Motley is going to propose his own ridiculous solution. Let's watch.
The problem is a family of three is not supposed to be living on a minimum wage. If you're making minimum wage, you shouldn't be having children and being on and trying to raise a family on it.
You shouldn't be having children. Stop having kids. Stop having kids, poor people. What are you doing? Stop having kids. That's your solution. That's your solution. Let's keep poor people from having children. I wonder how well that's going to work out. Well, if you look at Louisiana, if you look at New Mexico, obviously not very well. Now, as for my solution, well, why don't you have a list of the top 20 corporations receiving corporate welfare? You said so yourself. What's wrong with lists, right? What's wrong with a little shame? I think it's about time that those are the people, those are the corporations. If corporations are people, after all, those are the people that really deserve some shame. Now, as for his solution about lists, right? On the list, what are the end result that you want from this, right? Do you actually want poor people to be harassed? That's probably what's going to happen. Now, they say that it's to get poor people off welfare. Well, I got news for you, man. Most people aren't there because it's awesome to be on welfare. Because they're so proud of being on welfare. Because it pays so fucking much to be on welfare. Now, Rebecca Vallis actually made an excellent point that wages just haven't kept up for families. Now, it's not that people are out there having kids that they can't afford. Like, for example, Motley says. And by the way, this is probably from a guy who is anti-abortion, anti-Planned Parenthood, and pro-family. Yeah, I know. Funny, right? No, what happens is, or I should say what happened, is that everything has gone up in price. Food, energy, insurance, healthcare, childcare, etc. All of that has outpaced the minimum wage. How much? Well, the minimum wage in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, is actually worth $2 less than the minimum wage of 1968 in our money. Meaning that somebody making minimum wage in 1968 made $2 more. They actually lived better than someone making the minimum wage in 2015. Now, if these are the good old days that Republicans want to bring back, well, maybe that doesn't sound so bad. I mean, making $2, at least you're making $2 more, right? It would be the equivalent of about $9.25. $2, right? Now, of course, that would involve, going back to those days, stronger unions and a higher minimum wage. And of course, higher taxes on the rich. Oh, of course, they don't want to do that. No, we can't do that. Now, finally, the ironic argument that this guy makes is that while he's bemoaning the people being on welfare, he refuses to. He refuses to acknowledge or support the one single policy or one of the single policies that will actually help getting people off welfare. Shame doesn't work. What works is actually opportunity. And actually paying people who work, most of the people on welfare work, paying them a living wage where they can actually afford to live on their own without government assistance. But of course, as I said, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to ignore the one policy that will actually help people and instead shame people. And not only shame them, but invite other people to harass them. Look at that kind of rhetoric. That was on a segment called Entitlement Nation, where literally the opening graphic is a needy hand busting out of the middle of America like it's fucking aliens. Gimme. That's what that's the kind of rhetoric. You don't think that doesn't piss some people off? You don't think that doesn't incite some people? They're stealing from me. They're taking my hard-earned money. I need to do something. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. But I'm saying that is a possibility. I'm saying that kind of rhetoric and then publishing their address and their names publicly for people to go, here, have at them. These people are taking your hard-earned money. You don't think that's could lead to something dangerous? You don't think that's inappropriate? I do. I'm just saying. This is inviting people to harass other people that have fallen on hard times, that are taking, that are using welfare benefits as they're intended to do, and also trying to get them, to guilt them into getting a job that most likely doesn't exist due to things like outsourcing, offshoring, and or these jobs are minimum wage anyway, which means you're not going to be able to make enough money on your own anyway to avoid having to use welfare. This whole thing is just incredibly unbelievable.